The 20th Exodus, God reveals himself as God. I am the Lord, your God, personally revealing himself to his people, and I led you out of that place of slavery. For us, he led us out of that place of slavery of sin and brought us into being children of God. So what we want to look at today is just sins against the first commandment, particularly in this case, sins against faith, hope, and charity. Against faith. Sins against faith, since we're obliged to believe God and all that he has revealed. Doubt. Doubt is this, it can be voluntary or involuntary. The Catechism in a few of its numbers speaks about voluntary doubt. Voluntary doubt is just choosing freely to disregard what the church teaches as revealed by God, that the church is a custodian of the truth revealed by God, and choosing to either deny it or just not regard it as being true. Involuntary doubt would be the resistance that we have, the slowness to believe, even sometimes struggle that we have to believe that might be not our own deliberate actions, but just this kind of a dullness of our faith. And that's why, because of the first commandment, faith has to be preserved, faith has to be deepened, it has to be studied, we have to make acts of faith, we have to more and more allow our faith to go deeper so that our whole lives be lived by the rule of faith. Otherwise, since faith is utterly supernatural, then it can grow very, very weak in us, and then we can begin to become mediocre and actually have a dullness of heart so that we sin against the first commandment. We also have other sins against faith. For example, incredulity is the neglect of revealed truth. Willful assent or refusing to freely assent to the dogma of the Immaculate Conception or the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. This just not believing. It's a sin that the disciples committed in not believing, like Thomas, not believing what was being handed on to him about the resurrection, even if until I put my finger in his nail prints or my fist in his side, I will not believe. That's incredulity of Thomas, which Jesus takes him to task for, and he comes to believe after seeing. But blessed are we who don't see those wounds and yet believe what has been revealed to us, handed on to us by the church. You also have sins of heresy. Sin of heresy is after baptism to remain disbelieving or in error about a divinely revealed truth of the church. To apostatize, a very serious sin against the first commandment, would be to totally reject the Catholic faith, to reject my faith, to leave the church. I know that the church is necessary for salvation. If I voluntarily leave it, I know that, I endanger my salvation. Or knowing that it's necessary for salvation and refuse to enter if I'm not in it, then I can endanger my salvation. Most people perhaps who leave or who don't come in, hasn't been revealed to them, or at least in a credible fashion, which could be part of the fault of believers who put obstacles into the presence of the active faith of others. With regard to hope, we can sin against hope. Hope is that, as I mentioned, muscle of the will that drives us, gives us that desire to go toward heaven, to go toward God. But we can sin in two forms. We can sin by way of presumption. Presumption in two forms, either presumption on my own strength, that I don't need God, that I can get to heaven on my own, that I can be saved on my own. This is kind of a Pelagian type of who was a heretic during the early centuries of the church, that through our own efforts we could pull ourselves up to God. This kind of natural man. That's a presumption on my own power, which would be a sin against God, who alone can bring me into heaven. That my hope shall come not from man. Curses the man who trusts in himself or trusts in human beings. Blessed the man who trusts in God, who has his hope in God. In God we trust on our monetary bills in the United States. Other presumption would be presuming upon God's mercy. That God's going to take care of me. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be all right. God loves us all. He's going to take care of us all. And so I just go to confession. I'll just go to confession. I'll do this sin and then I'll go to confession later. That's a presumption, very serious sin against hope. Another, on the other side of sinning against hope is not in the excess, but rather we call the defect. That would be despair. Despairing that my sin is too big. I'm bigger than God, and so my sin is too grave that God can't forgive me. And that there's no hope for me. There's no help for me in God. That would be despair. We know that's the sin of Judas in despairing. Peter committed the same grave mortal sin, denying God, and yet he wept. He had hope in salvation from God. Finally, charity. We are obliged to love God and to give Him ourselves. Sin of indifference, not reflecting on God's love for me, on what He's done for me. You see, thinking about what God has done for me. Ingratitude, not returning love for love. My sins of ingratitude for God's love for me, what He's done for me today. That's why we make a morning offering and a thanksgiving. That's why we thank God for what He's done for us throughout the day. This gratitude for God, cultivating an awe of God. Lukewarmness, becoming slower and slower to respond to promptings of charity. Love of God and love of neighbor. I become lazy about things spiritual. And then acedia, or the spiritual sloth, which becomes much more of a sickness that can make me gradually deny the joy that comes from God and eventually come toward a hatred of God. And so these are sins against faith, hope, and charity which affect directly the first commandment. Next time we'll look at the first commandment a little further and look at further sins against the commandment and how we might be able to live it more perfectly. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you, Father Champagne. Coming up next, in a conversation with Bishop Michael Jarrell, Monsignor Richard Green interviews Bishop Jarrell about another important topic.
Good morning, and thank you for letting us in your home for another conversation with Bishop Jarrell. Bishop, thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Tomorrow, August the 15th, we celebrate the solemnity of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. It is the patronal feast of the Acadians, and it is a holy day of obligation. Usually, there is an obligation for Catholics to attend Mass, as we do on Sunday, but not this year. And so, Bishop, the first question, some of our people are confused about this holy day situation. Why is the Assumption not a day of obligation this year?
Well, let me make the point, first of all, that it is a holy day, and we do observe it in the church as a special feast. In fact, it is one of the 6 holy days of obligation that we have in the United States. But some years ago, the bishops of the United States decided that when certain holy days of obligation fall on a Saturday or a Monday, either side of Sunday, the obligation to attend Mass is lifted. And August 15th this year is on a Monday, so the obligation to attend Mass has been lifted.
Well, the obvious question is why?
Well, I think there were a number of pastoral reasons why the bishops put this in place. Partially it's because of parish schedules, especially a lot of our larger parishes who have a very busy Mass schedule. And it starts with anticipated Masses on Saturday, so that then you have a parish going from, if the holy day is on a Saturday, they go from Friday evening through all day Saturday, then all day Sunday to Sunday evening. It gets to be very taxing, not only on the priest, but also on the parish staff. So that's one of the reasons. It's this idea of being back to back with something that is already very busy, and that is Saturday evening and all day Sunday. Yes. So it's basically because of those reasons. In some places, people have become careless about holy days of obligation, so I think that was a factor also.
Okay. Well, Bishop, so when holy days in the United States fall on a Saturday or Monday, there's no obligation to attend Mass?
Well, it depends on which day. Because, you see, in canon law, there are 10 holy days of obligation, but in the United States, we only have 6. The National Conference of Bishops has the authority and the ability to adjust these. And so in the United States we have 6. And the bishops have said that in the United States 2 of these holy days are very special, and that they should be celebrated as days of obligation, the obligation to attend Mass, no matter what day they fall on.
Yes.
Okay, and those 2 are Christmas, which is very understandable because it is a holiday in our country as well, and also the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. And the reason is because the solemnity of the Immaculate Conception is the patronal feast of the United States. And because of its importance then for the United States, if it falls on a Saturday or Monday, yes, we still have the holy day, just like Christmas. It's a day of obligation, even if it falls on a Saturday or Monday. Now the others, the obligation is lifted if they fall on Saturday or Monday. And those are January 1st, the Feast of Mary, the Mother of God. The Ascension, which we will learn has been transferred to the following Sunday. The Assumption, the one we're talking about now, and the Feast of All Saints. So those four are subject to transfer.
Okay. Well, Bishop, what about Easter? You didn't mention Easter.
No, Easter, of course, is the primary holy day in the whole year of the church, but it always falls on a Sunday. So it is always a day of obligation, and there's no need to list it as a special holy day of obligations. The ones we put under that list of holy days of obligation are the ones that have a certain date, and therefore they can fall on any day of the week. But Easter is always on a Sunday.
Okay. Bishop, you mentioned the Feast of the Ascension. Wasn't there some change related to that as well?
Well, yes, the Ascension has a little bit different status here, and that is that bishops have the option of transferring it from Thursday and putting it on the following Sunday. We always spoke about, or traditionally we spoke about Ascension Thursday because it was 40 days after Easter. You count 40, you wind up on a Thursday. But each province in the United States was given the option of keeping it on the Thursday or transferring it to the following Sunday. Our province is the New Orleans province, the whole state of Louisiana, the Archdiocese of New Orleans, and the 6 other dioceses in the state. And the bishops of our province have decided that it is transferred to the following Sunday. And it has been so for a number of years. But there are several provinces in the United States who still celebrate it on the Thursday. So there's some flexibility there.
Bishop, you explain it well, but it may be still confusing for some people. What do you think?
Well, it is confusing, but so is life today. You know, look at telephones. We used to just pick them up and say hello.
Yes.
So it is a little complex, but I think pastors usually inform parishioners about the schedule, and the more people experience this, the more accustomed they'll become to it.
Well, Bishop, I have more questions, and let's continue it next week. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you, Bishop Gerald and Monsignor Green. Join us next week for another conversation with Bishop Michael Gerald for What It Means to Be Catholic with Father Michael Champagne. Trista Littell has an interview with Mary Rose Verrett about important upcoming events in the Marriage and Family Life Office. We hope you've enjoyed our program because it is produced for you. So please join us next week on this station as we tell the people about the Diocese of Lafayette and the good news of our Catholic faith.